Who is Stephen Wolfram?
Huh. The, well, let's see. I remember many years ago, people ask me what do you do? Well, do science. I run a tech company. I have been lucky enough to be able to sort of alternate between doing basic science and doing technology about 5 times so far in my life. And it's in terms of technology, the main thing I've built is things around what we call Wolfram language, which is a language that tries to represent sort of everything in the world computationally. So it's and that's led to Mathematica, which gets used by lots of people for doing technical kinds of computations, and Wolfram Alpha, which gets used by, well, lots of people doing lots of students, people in the world at large. There's a new user base for Wolfram Alpha that's about to be very big, which is AIs. And because they really need to ask questions to reading the internet and sort of putting together words based on what's on the internet isn't really the whole story. So the thing that's been really great about Wolfram Alpha is that we built this natural language interface to it as a way to be able to take sort of questions from humans and be able to put them in computational form and answer them. But now that interface is also a great interface for the current generation of AIs. So we'll see. It'll be interesting to see at what point the number of queries from AIs exceeds the number of queries from humans. That might be a sign of the coming AI civilization. Who's to know? But anyway, that's on the technology side. That's stuff that I do. Actually, was on the science side. Well, gosh, I started off when I was a kid, which was a depressingly long time ago, doing particle physics and cosmology, and then quickly discovered that I needed tools that were computational tools to do things I wanted to do in science. So started building technology. That's how I sort of got into that. But then got interested in this question of sort of how does complicated stuff happen in the world? And turned out that there wasn't really a good science answer to that. And so I sort of started trying to build kind of a paradigm for thinking about that. That led me to kind of questions about how do simple programs behave. Then this was early 1980s. I kind of discovered a bunch of things that were kind of shocking to me and very much violated my intuition about how things work. Basically, that you can have, as you were alluding to, very simple programs can do very complicated things. One might have thought from our experience with engineering and so on, that if you want to make something complicated, you have to go lots of effort and set the thing up in a complicated way. But it turns out that's not true, that even really simple programs, when you run them, can do very complicated things. And that seems to be sort of the secret that nature uses to make lots of the complexity we see in nature. But that fact sort of turned into my efforts to kind of build a new kind of science that are based on simple programs rather than based on the sort of long tradition of mathematical equations that have kind of dominated the exact sciences for the last 300 or so years. So this is that kind of led me on a journey that started in the early 1980s and led through that big book you were just holding up, A New Kind of Science, that came out in 2002, and led me back into technology and back into understanding what was possible in technology. And then, what was it, about I'm losing track of time, 3.5 years ago, led me back to a question that I'd long been interested in, which is sort of, how does the physical universe fundamentally work? What is the fundamental theory of physics? And I had ideas about that in the early 1990s based on kind of this whole computational way of thinking about everything. But then, particularly thanks to a couple of young physicists who were like, you can't not do this. You got to, if this is going to work, you've got to push forward and do it. So I said, okay, if you help me do this, I'll try and do it. And so by the beginning of 2020, right when the pandemic started, actually, we had tremendous success in understanding sort of how fundamental physics is put together. And it's been really, really exciting because, you come up with kind of a theory in science, And usually you find, oh, there's some data, and some data agrees, some data disagrees. You have to kind of adapt your theory in this way or that way. Nothing like that has happened. We have a definite theory, and it's really hard to work out the consequences of that theory, but it's been a completely straight shot of, here's the theory. As soon as we work out a consequence, it turns out that consequence works out great. And it turns out that consequence is like what we actually see in the natural world and so on. And this is kept on going. And what's sort of even more surprising, in a sense, is that the kind of the paradigm that we've sort of been forced into by this thinking about fundamental physics turns out to be applicable to lots of other kinds of things as well. And so, for example, a big effort in metamathematics and understanding the foundations of mathematics was sort of completed, what was it, beginning of this year, I guess. I'm losing track of time, terrible. Then and even like I've been working quite a lot on the current sort of round of AI innovations and so on. And she just wrote a piece that's turning into a little tiny book about how does ChatGPT, what is it doing and why does it work? Which I kind of more or less understand, and the answer is scientifically interesting. But one of the things that leads to is the whole question of, so what's going to happen with us and AIs, and are we in the last years of our species, so to speak, and is it all AIs all the way out, and so on? And I've been thinking about that. In fact, I've just been working on that last few days, and I've been going through these kind of waves of do I understand what's going on? Do I not understand what's going on? Is it all doom and gloom, or is there some opportunity for sort of us? And I've kind of come to realize that a core idea that comes out of basic science I've done, the idea of computational irreducibility, is probably what's going to kind of save us all. And it's kind of the same. It's the computational irreducibility is this idea that just because you know the program that something is running according to, just because you know the rules that something is operating according to, it doesn't mean you can immediately kind of jump ahead and say what the thing is going to do. There's this kind of irreducible computational process that's involved in working out what the consequences of some set of rules will be. And it's that, that irreducible computational process is what I think is kind of represents the passage of time in the universe for us, etc. But the fact that there's this kind of irreducibility, the fact you can't figure out what the outcome is without essentially following each step, just has tons and tons of consequences. And one of the consequences is, it's kind of, I was just thinking about it actually this morning, it's kind of the question, is there an apex intelligence, so to speak? We talk about in, trophic levels in ecology and so on, the apex predator. It's kind of like, is there a winning organism in some sense? Is there a winning sort of path to sort of where it's, this AI is the apex AI, so to speak? And what I realized is that computational irreducibility shows that will never be the case. That it's always just sort of for the same kinds of reasons that there's always more stuff to be invented. You never get to the point where all the things that you could, so in a sense, an invention, okay, when we think about sort of the passage of time in the universe and so on, there's this sort of irreducible computational process, and the in a sense, one of the things that is important to us is, at least in the current state of things, we live only finite lives. We have only a finite amount of time. So the question is, what can we achieve in that amount of time? And so anything that lets us kind of jump ahead, anything that lets us kind of beat a bit of computational irreducibility and sort of get more value from the time we have, is a win. And so in a sense, the whole raft of automation, technology, even paradigms and ideas, they're all sort of stories of how do we jump ahead a bit? How do we, with automation, we, instead of, having to assemble all the pieces of your smartphone or something and then use it, things like that, you just have the smartphone. It's already assembled. You can yes, just like that, right?